On December 26, 1900, a lighthouse tender boat named the Hesperus arrived at Eileen Mor in the Flannan Isles so the 3 lighthouse keepers on duty could rotate. However, they noticed that there were no preparations made at the dock, there was no flag on the flagstaff, and there was no provision boxes left for them like usual. So the captain of the Hesperus blew the siren and the steam whistle to get the attention of the 3 on-duty lighthouse keepers. After realizing that this whistle and siren had no effect, he then fired a rocket into the air, which too would get no response. This is the strange disappearance of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers. My sources can be found below in the description, and viewer discretion is advised for dark humor, distressing content, and strong language. I'm not Cocomelon, I am just some dickhead who likes mysteries. Moving on. The captain of the Hesperus then decided to launch another smaller boat to land the assistant keeper Joseph Mor, along with another seaman named Mr. McCormick. When the boat reached the dock, there was still no signs of the 3 on-duty lighthouse keepers. These men would often secure these tender boats to the landing so they can sign on and off the island, but without the assistance, Mor and McCormick backed the boat into the landing, and with some difficulty, Mor managed to jump ashore. McCormick then stayed behind at the boat, and Mor went all the way up to the lighthouse, where he found the entrance gate and the outside doors closed. The clock on the wall was stopped, there was no fire lit, and in fact it looked like the fire was not lit for a good couple of days. And then when Mor started searching each bedroom for the lighthouse keepers, all of the beds were empty. And this is about the time that Joseph Mor said to himself, "Hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right." And he ran all the way back down to the boat and told McCormick that some shit has happened here that people are going to still be talking about on YouTube in about 100 years from now. When McCormick asked Mor, "What in the fuck is YouTube?" Mor said that that's not important right now, but you've got to come up to the lighthouse with me and help me look for the keepers. The 2 men went back up to the lighthouse to make sure that Joseph Mor didn't miss anything, and they started thoroughly searching the lighthouse for the keepers, but obviously they found nothing. They then gave up at some point and returned to their boat and then returned to the Hesperus. They then told Captain Harvey of the Hesperus that they have absolutely no idea where these 3 lighthouse keepers are. Captain Harvey then told Joseph Mor to return to the island and keep the light going. Mor was then joined by 2 more seamen named Lamont and Campbell, as well as a buoymaster named Mr. MacDonald, and they all stayed on Eileen Mor to man the lighthouse. Meanwhile, Captain Harvey returned to Braithcleet to report the incident, and he sent a telegram to the Northern Lighthouse Board dated December 26, 1900, stating, quote, "A dreadful accident has happened at Flannan's. The 3 keepers, Duckett, Marshall, and the occasional Donald MacArthur, have all disappeared from the island. On our arrival there this afternoon, no sign of life was to be seen on the island. Fired a rocket, but as no response was made, managed to land Mor, who went up to the station but found no keepers there. The clocks were stopped, and other signs indicated that the accident must have happened about a week ago. Poor fellas, they must have been blown off the cliffs or drowned trying to secure a crane or something like that. Night coming on, we could not wait to make something as to their fate. I have left Mor and MacDonald the buoymaster, and 2 other seamen on the island to keep the light burning until you make other arrangements. Will not return to Oban until I hear from you. I have repeated this wire to Muirhead in case you are not at home. I will remain at the telegraph office tonight until it closes, if you wish to wire me." End quote. Back on the island, Joseph Mor and his team started looking around for clues as to what in the blue hell happened to the 3 on-duty lighthouse keepers. They realized that the last written entries in the keepers' logs were for December 13th, but the particulars for December 14th, including the time of extinguishing the light on December 15th, as well as some barometer and thermometer readings and the state of the wind taken at 9 AM on December 15th, were written on the slate for transferring into the log later. They also noticed that the lamp was crimped, the oil fountains and canteens were filled up, and the light's lens and the machinery were cleaned, which proved that the tasks needed to be completed on December 15th had been completed. The pots and pans had been washed, and the kitchen had been tidied up, which showed that the man who had been acting as cook had completed his work as well. This all suggested that the 3 lighthouse keepers had disappeared after the afternoon of December 15th. Supporting this notion is a report from a captain of a steamer boat. while news spread of the disappearance and the story began to be published in newspapers. A guy named Captain Holman had passed the Flannan Islands in a steamer called the Arcta at around midnight on December the 15th, and he claimed that he could not see the lighthouse. He went on to say that he thought that was strange because he thought that he should have been able to see it. But then for some reason he decided not to report this. Then on December 28th, Joseph Moore wrote this in a letter, quote, "We traversed the island from end to end, but still nothing to be seen to convince us how it happened. Nothing appears touched at the east landing to show that they were taken from there. Ropes are all in their respective places in the shelter, just as they were left after the relief on the 7th. On west side, it is somewhat different. We had an old box halfway up the railway for holding the west landing mooring ropes and tackle, and this box is gone. Some of the ropes, it appears, got washed out of it. They lie strewn on the rocks near the crane. The crane itself is safe. The iron railings along the passage connecting the railway with the footpath to the landing, starting from their foundations, are broken in several places, as is the railing around the crane, and so is the handrail for securing the mooring ropes for boats. These railings have all been entirely carried away. But there is nothing to give us an indication that it was there that the poor men lost their lives." Fair enough. Moore is a man of science. Then on December 29th, Robert Muirhead, a Northern Lighthouse Board superintendent, arrived to conduct the official investigation into the incident. Robert Muirhead is also the man that originally recruited all of the 3 missing lighthouse keepers, and he knew them personally. Also, most of my information for this video is coming directly from his report and his investigation. Robert Muirhead wrote, quote, "On the Thursday and Friday, the men made a thorough search over and round the island, and I went over the ground with them on Saturday. Everything at the east landing was in order, and the ropes which had been coiled and stored there on the completion of the relief on the 7th were all in their places, and the lighthouse buildings and everything at the stations was in order. Owing to the amount of sea, I could not get down to the landing place, but I got down to the crane platform 70 feet above the sea level. The crane, originally erected on this platform, was washed away during last winter, and the crane put up this summer was found to be unharmed. The jib was lowered and still secured to the rock, and the canvas covering the wire rope on the barrel still securely lashed round it, and there was no evidence that the men had been doing anything at the crane. However, the mooring ropes, landing ropes, derrick landing ropes and crane handles, as well as the wooden box that Joseph Moore mentioned before, which they kept secured in a crevice in the rock 70 feet up the tramway from its terminus, and about 40 feet higher than the crane platform, had all been washed away, and the ropes were strewn in the crevices of the rocks near the crane platform, and entangled among the crane legs, but they were all coiled up, no single coil being found unfastened. The iron railings round the crane platform and from the terminus of the tramway to the concrete steps up from the west landing were displaced and twisted. Also, a large block of stone, weighing more than 1 ton, had been dislodged from its position higher up and had fallen onto the concrete path, which led from the terminus of the tramway to the top of the steps. A lifebuoy, fastened to the railings along this path, to be used in the case of emergency, had also disappeared, and I thought at first that it had been removed for the purpose of being used, but on examining the ropes by which it was fastened, I found that they had not been touched, and as pieces of canvas was adhering to the ropes, it was evident that the force of the sea, pouring through all the railings, even at this great height, 110 feet above sea level, tore the lifebuoy off the ropes. Based on the items of clothing missing from the lighthouse, when the accident occurred, Duckett was wearing sea boots and a waterproof. A waterproof what? I am not sure, that's how Robert Muirhead wrote it. Thomas Marshall was wearing his sea boots and oilskins, and Donald MacArthur must have went out without a coat because his was still in the lighthouse. And as Joseph Moore assures me, that the men only wore those articles when going down to the landings. They must have intended when they left the station either to go down to the landing or the proximity of it. Muirhead goes on to say, quote, "After a careful examination of the place, the railings and ropes etc., and weighing all of the evidence which I could secure, I am of opinion that the most likely explanation of the disappearance of the men is that they had all gone down on the afternoon of Saturday, December 15th to the proximity of the west landing to secure the box with the mooring ropes, and that an unexpectedly large roller had come up on the island and a large body of water, going up higher than where they were and coming down upon them, had swept them away with resistless force. I have considered and discussed the possibility that the men were blown away by the wind, but as the wind was westerly, I am of the opinion, notwithstanding its great force, that the more probable explanation is that they had been washed away, as had the wind caught them, it would from its direction have blown them up the island, and I feel certain that they would have managed to throw themselves down before they had reached the summit, or the brow of the island." End quote. Now, while reading everybody's letters, telegrams, and reports, it's quite clear that they had a decent idea or theory of what happened already in the early 1900s. The 3 Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers were most likely washed away while trying to secure some equipment. However, some people don't like rational explanations, and some people don't think the story is tragic and terrible enough already, so they have to make shit up. So let's take a look at some of these theories. Now, a quick disclaimer, some of these theories are absolutely fucking ridiculous. In fact, they're downright insulting. But hey, if that is what you believe, that's fine. Some people believe the earth is flat. Some people blame their poor memory on Nelson Mandela. Some people believe that Ed and Lorraine Warren were doing the Lord's work, even though that this piece of shit was having an affair with an underage girl. Allegedly. But it was so alleged that Lorraine's reported contract with New Line Cinema specifically mentioned that the films couldn't show the Warrens engaging in crimes, including sex with pornography, prostitution, or sexual assault, and that neither the husband nor the wife could be depicted as participating in an extramarital sexual relationship. Allegedly. Point is, you do you, believe what you want. Theory number 1, a sea serpent. And that's all you get. There's no more information on this theory. I spent a lot of time at sea, and I saw a lot of things. I saw dolphins, saw a couple of whales, I even once saw a lady in the front row of my event puke into her handbag, and then just stay there like nothing happened while everyone around her slowly started leaving. Then my team went to her and were all like, "Are you okay? Do you want us to call the doctor?" And she was like, "Nah, I'm all good." And they were like, "Ma'am, I don't think you have the mental capacity right now to determine how good you are because you are puking into your fucking handbag. The people around you are starting to feel sick and you've obviously lost your battle with the drinks package." And she was like, "Nah, I'm perfectly alright and I'm having the time of my fucking life here at this event." So we just carried on and tried not to die. The cruise line drinks package. What a wonderful thing. So yeah, I've seen a lot of things, but never once saw a sea serpent. Some other creative individuals have also suggested that the lighthouse keepers were taken away by a giant seabird. Well, like I just said, I've seen a lot of things. Never saw a giant seabird though. Saw turtles, saw a cruise ship crash into another cruise ship, that was pretty weird. Even saw a guy once complaining at guest services that the chicken wings that cost $5 were too small. So the lady at guest services just said, "I'm sorry that we don't have giant seabird wings to offer you instead, because they don't exist." Well, that story is only half true. The lady at guest services actually said, "Sorry, we'll send you some chocolate strawberries for the inconvenience." So if you ever go on a cruise, here's my big tip to you. You'll get whatever the fuck you want if you act like a cunt. But just know that after that though, no matter how much the crew smile at you, they are secretly hoping that giant seabirds are real, and that one grabs you and takes you away forever. Theory number 2. They staged their disappearance and started a new life. Since no bodies were ever found, people believe that a ship came to pick them up and take them to a different country. Maybe. However, there's no evidence to suggest that there was anything going on in their lives that would encourage such a decision. But it's not a bad theory. It's not as bad as sea serpents. Also, just consider the fact that bodies don't always wash up on shore after being lost to the ocean. Theory number 3. They were abducted by foreign spies. I don't know why. My only guess is for their juicy, juicy lighthouse secrets. Theory number 4. They had met their fate through the malevolent presence of a boat filled with ghosts. What? What the fuck? Theory number 5. A storm, the like of which I have never seen before in 20 years. Now this one actually wouldn't be so ridiculous if it wasn't for the fact that it was supported by a series of very unusual logbook entries. Now over time, as is tradition, a story developed of the existence of unusual logbook entries. They supposedly have Thomas Marshall saying that on December 12th, there were, quote, severe winds, the likes of which I have never seen before in 20 years. He also is said to have reported that James Duckett had been very quiet and Donald MacArthur had been crying. Now, Donald MacArthur was a veteran mariner with a reputation for brawling, and so it's kinda strange that Thomas Marshall is saying that he is crying because of a storm. Then there's some logbook entries on December 13th saying that the storm was still raging, and that all three men had been praying. This is also weird, because all three of these lighthouse keepers were experienced lighthouse keepers who knew that they were safe in a secure structure, which was 150 feet above sea level. Furthermore, there had been no reported storms in the area on December 12th, December 13th, or December 14th. The final log entry on December 15th, however, says, quote, storm ended, sea calm, God is over all. Pretty spooky. However, an investigation by a guy named Mike Dash for the 40 Times revealed that the logbooks were fictional. Can anybody explain why this happens so often? These are true stories, these are real people, and it's an actual tragedy. Why do people feel the need to embellish these stories? It's horrible enough already. Anyway, theory number 6, geos. According to Wikipedia, researchers have taken into account the geography of the islands. The coastline of Eileen Mor is deeply indented with narrow gullies called geos. The West Landing, where all of the damage was, is situated in such a geo. In high seas or storms, water would rush into these gullies or geos and then explode out again with considerable force. It's possible that Donald MacArthur, who is assumed to have been ordered to stay back and keep lookout, saw a series of large waves approaching the island, and knowing the likely danger to his colleagues, ran down to warn them, only to be washed away as well in the violent swell. Finally, a good theory. However, theory number 7, in my opinion, is the most likely theory. As stated already in the 1900s, the poor fellas must have been washed away by a large roller while trying to secure some equipment. Now, while there were no clues or indications of what happened to the keepers, there were traces of bad weather outside the lighthouse. The Northern Lighthouse Board concluded their investigation with the theory that the keepers must have left the lighthouse for some purpose in the storm. Now, recent research shows that Thomas Marshall was previously fined 5 shillings when his equipment was washed away during a large gale. So it is likely, in trying to avoid another fine, that he and James Duckett tried to secure their equipment during the storm and were swept away as a result. Now, what happened to Donald MacArthur, who had been, like I said, required to stay behind and man the lighthouse, is believed to be the same, presumably by leaving the lighthouse to help or warn the others of a large wave. And then it's quite possible that all 3 of them were caught by this large roller and swept into the sea. This theory explains why MacArthur's oilskin, his waterproof jacket thing, was still in the lighthouse. However, Wikipedia claims that it does not explain the closed door and gate that Joseph Moore found. Well, MacArthur could have just closed it, or the wind could have just closed it. It doesn't seem to be locked when Joseph Moore got there, or at least he didn't report that. But based on how thorough everybody's reports were, it doesn't seem locked and anything could have closed it. Hey, if it was locked, then I'd say you'd have an argument for a sea serpent, or a boat of ghosts. Now, furthering this theory is a guy named Walter Alderbert. I should clarify, not furthering the sea serpent theory, but furthering the large roller theory. Walter Alderbert was a keeper on the Flannan Isles from 1953 to 1957, and he believed that one of the men may have been washed into the sea and then his companions were trying to rescue him, and then all 3 of the lighthouse keepers got washed away by more rogue waves. Now, Walter probably knows what he's talking about, as does Joseph Moore, as does Robert Muirhead. These guys probably spent a lot of their time in lighthouses and looking at the water. So if there's anybody's theory that we need to take seriously, it's these 3 fucking guys. And they're all saying the same thing. They've been saying it since it fucking happened. Now, obviously the exact specifics of this mystery are unclear. Like, what exactly were they trying to secure? Why exactly did they leave the lighthouse in the storm? But that's clearly what happened. Since Thomas Marshall had been fined in the past for losing equipment, it makes sense that when the storm hits, the keepers are like, shit, did we secure the stuff properly? Maybe we should go check. I don't want to lose more fucking money. They go down to the West Landing, they're trying to secure their equipment, and then boom, they get hit by a large roller. They get pulled out into the sea, and Donald MacArthur, who's up in the lighthouse, sees this, and he's like, fuck, maybe I should go help these guys. He runs out quickly, and then he also gets hit by a large roller. Have you ever been to the beach? Have you ever just seen one single wave come through and then the beach is just calm? The only issue with this theory is justifying the logic of the lighthouse keepers. Why would they leave the safety and comfort of their lighthouse during a storm? Well, I'm going to refer to my time on cruise ships again. Down in the dungeons where the crew live, there are these doors called watertight doors. These doors are designed to close no matter what kind of force is against them, no matter what is in the way, nothing will stop these doors from closing. So if there's a breach in the ship and there's water rushing in, these doors prevent the spread of water and can help the ship stay afloat for long enough to get somewhere safe. So as you can understand, it's important for these doors to be able to close no matter what. Therefore, they are extremely fucking dangerous. This is hammered into the crew's heads. It is preached to them on a daily basis how fucking dangerous these doors are. Do you think it stops people from doing stupid shit around them? Almost every contract I was on, there is a story somewhere of someone getting fucking cut in half by one of these watertight doors. But we're experienced seamen. We're experienced crew members. We have safety certificates. I'm a trained firefighter now. Nah man, when you're on ships, every second counts. It's like the military. This woman who just puked in a handbag needs another drink. We need a bartender there now. So when the ship is getting ready to sail away from port, these doors start closing. And hey, people gotta get to work. So they just walk straight through them. Now since I did get a couple of comments saying you'd like to hear some more crazy cruise ship stories, and I'm trying to argue the logic of the lighthouse keepers leaving the lighthouse in a storm, this next story I'm about to tell you seems kinda relevant as well. Now, other than crashing into an iceberg and not having enough door space to survive, the most dangerous thing that can happen to a ship at sea is fire. There is so much safety training on ships. There's tons of courses, there's weekly safety drills, and monthly safety meetings, and that's not even all of it. But since not every crew member working on a cruise ship is a marine or a deck officer, one of the most important things to know for everybody's safety is what type of fire extinguisher should be used to fight which type of fire. Now you'd think that the one person who should know this better than anybody else other than maybe the safety officer or the captain is the staff captain, who is second in command to the captain and responsible for overseeing the ship's navigation, deck operations, maintenance, and safety, and also crew discipline. Now a safety officer once told me that on one of the ships he was on, a fire broke out in the kitchen. Specifically, the fire broke out in one of the deep fat fryers. Now for a deep fat fryer fire, there is only one type of fire extinguisher you are supposed to use. It's called a wet chemical extinguisher. This thing basically makes like a foam on top of the deep fat fryer and then kind of smothers the flames that way. Now the reason you don't want to use a normal extinguisher, but he's a human being in a stressful situation and he made a mistake. And since we're trying to argue the logic of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers, maybe they didn't realize how dangerous it was outside. And all that was really on their mind was, if this equipment gets washed away, we're going to be fined and lose some money. They were human beings at the end of the day. And yeah man, that's all I have to say. Oh no, I got one more theory for the road for you guys. And theory number 8 is based on the psychology of the lighthouse keepers. Now it sounds like it's going to be deep, but it's only a deep pile of dog shit. Allegedly, Donald MacArthur was quite an aggressive guy. He had a reputation for brawling and was known to be quite violent. So it's speculated and theorized, of course, that this may have led to a fight breaking out near the cliff edge by the West Landing that caused all 3 men to fall to their deaths. Now, if we've got no evidence for waves washing the keepers away, why the fuck do we suggest sea serpents, ghosts, and lighthouse UFC as a possible cause? It's crazy, man. Anyway, I feel pretty certain that they were probably washed away while trying to secure some equipment. Exactly how they suggested it happened in the 1900s already. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and I'll see you again soon with another mystery. Thanks for watching.